Hey guys, Anthony 4x4 Diesel. We're just going to explain in this video briefly how a cracked piston is not a normal failure. It is an abnormal failure and it shouldn't happen. It's not a normal failure. I'll repeat, not normal. This is not normal. This is not how the life of an engine finishes up. It's not how it comes to an end. It's not normal. It's not what you should expect. It's not what you planned when you purchased your Prado or Hilux or any other, whether it's a Ford Ranger or whatever. There's other engines that crack pistons. They look the same. They crack the same. It's not just a 1 kd problem, but it is not. It's becoming normal, okay? It's becoming normal, but it's certainly not. Okay, so for decades and decades, I started in the automotive industry officially in the 90s. So we've got about, 30 decades of experience. My tech school, I also did automotive because it was a tech school, so we had an automotive teacher, and we were working on engines back then. So that was back in the, that was still in the 90s, I think. Was that in the 80s or the 90s? It might have even been in the late 80s. But anyway, the point is, we learned a lot about engines even before we got to trade school, okay? And yes, we went to trade school. Box Hill, what was it called? Box Hill TAFE or something like that anyway. I've got a certificate somewhere, I can't even remember. But obviously that's where we learn a lot of this sort of thing as well. And what we've seen over the decades is vehicles and engines have improved a lot, okay? Everyone would agree that, the quality of all sorts of things has improved. If you think back to the 50s when I wasn't around, but I can tell you because I've seen things from the 50s. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to waste time giving examples. You know that the quality manufacturing, the finished product of a lot of things has improved. Everything's improved. There's the labor's got worse, unfortunately. This is things that haven't improved, right? When it's not made by a machine and a precise machine and whatever, when it's labor and people doing something, it seems to be in the last couple of decades in particular, it's gone downhill. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an item. We're talking about engines and pistons. So in motor vehicles, the quality of everything, I mean, let's compare an old Toyota. It was an awesome vehicle. The old Corolla in the 70s, the little square thing. Right, awesome vehicle. Let's compare to a new one now, 2022. Just a little bit different. The quality is up there. The fuel efficiency is up there. The engines will last longer. Better quality machining materials. There's a lot more R&D testing. Technology, things have got better, right? So many years ago, back then when I started, the typical failure of an engine, wear and tear, engines used to get wear, rings, the things that go around the pistons here, rings would wear. There was abnormal failures with some engines as well, but they become a lot less common because of better fuel systems. There's no more, the old carburetor. Does anyone remember what the carburetor is? Fuel injection came along, right? That got really good as well. There's all these sensors that tells the computer. So they've got better and better and better, okay? The ignition system, remember points, does anyone remember points? I haven't got any points here to show you. Distributors, leads, all these systems that used to break down. So the design and the technology, everything's so much better. These engines run so clean, efficient, better designs, breathing, inlets, exhaust, more valves, better combustion, better fuel delivery, the right amount of fuel at the right time. So the engines are running really efficient. The quality of the materials most companies are using, the machining. So these things are bloody bulletproof. So where we used to have wearing rings, or you might have the big end bearings wearing, right? On the Conrod, I haven't got one of those here to show you either at the moment, but there's a flat plate type bearing, usually made from copper, I think, if I remember correctly. I'm not an engine rebuilder, but these things can wear if engines have been starved of oil, lack of oil. So we can understand that if any manufacturers have got warranty concerns with engines, we can understand that they want to see the service history. But I've got to tell you, with this one, the service history isn't too relevant. We'll get to that in a minute. But they want to see the service history, because if you've got a problem with an engine and there's a lack of oil, that can cause, there's camshafts running in heads on a lot of engine that can cause the alloy to get hot and melt, and that sort of melt and the surface gets damaged, okay? The camshafts can get damaged, the camshaft lowers, the bearings, all sorts of things, right? Now, these are the typical failures that we used to have, right, with engines. Normal wear and tear. You saw the old Tirana or the old Falcon or whatever it was, VB Commodore, and everyone starts their car and they blow smoke and everyone drives off. Do you remember 30, 40 years ago when you're at the lights and every time you took off, mate, put on recirculate, these blue plumes of smoke and black diesel smoke? There wasn't many diesels, it was mainly petrols, but do you notice it doesn't happen anymore? It's not just because of catalytic converters and DPFs and stuff like that. things got really good before that happened. Okay, so the engines run really clean, they're really good quality, so these things aren't wearing like they used to. Now, the manufacturer often oil changes recommendation is about every 10,000 Ks. In some other countries, it's 10,000 miles. And thanks to everybody else overseas that's watching, appreciate your support. But regardless of whether it's 10,000 or 15,000, thereabouts, some manufacturers in Australia were saying 12,500 Ks, that sort of thing. The point is, oils ain't oils, and oils are oils. They're still kind of what they used to be. They're a little bit better. They've got additives and all this sort of stuff. The oils are better as well. But the point is, oil is the lifeblood of the engine, and that's why we recommend, it's not what the manufacturers recommend, that's why we recommend every 5,000 Ks. The oil's cleaner, there's less particulate matter in it, so it's getting around, keeping things clean, lubricating everything even better, at least twice as good as what the manufacturer could have hoped for. That's why we recommend it. It's cheap insurance, okay? You only do your oil changes, you know, well, if you're doing a lot of Ks, you might do it too often, you might stick to every 10,000, but for a lot of people, they're only going to be doing it if it's every 4 months, that's 3 times a year for an oil change. Do you know what I mean? So whether you take it somewhere or do it yourself, an oil change is an oil change. Keep your receipts. We've said that in other videos. But what I'm getting at in this video is, do you get the picture? The normal failures are wearing rings. You know, when there's wrong combustion and some wrong designs in engines, you know, you can get different wear on pistons and other sorts of failures. Once again, they are abnormal failures. And when you spend $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 or $100,000 big money on a motor vehicle, you shouldn't be faced with abnormal failures in this day and age, 2022, right? Or even 2010 or anywhere like that. These sort of engines, technology and engines since the year 2000, I put this, that's my mile marker, 2000, a lot of manufacturers were using steel head gaskets, much better than the old ones that had problems. Even in the Falcons, you remember, a lot of head gaskets in the 6-cylinder engines, EAs, EBs, EDs, EFs, head gaskets, city, okay? The AUs came out, steel head gasket, problem solved, okay? Of course, they could still crack heads, but that was mainly in engines running on gas. That's a whole different story in a different video. I'm just trying to paint a picture and tell you that normal failures is what we've discussed. Wearing engines from lacks of oil changes or crappy quality engines or a filtration problem, air filters not fitted properly, crappy air filters, sensors not being cleaned, all this sort of thing, okay? It's well documented by Toyota that this cracked piston here is caused by wrong combustion, caused by injectors not working correctly. So when you've got a small diesel engine that's so finely tuned to get this much power and torque out of it, it needs to be running in peak condition is pretty much what they're telling you. And I would agree with that, because it's all these, when they're not running in peak condition is when it has problems. Nowhere in their schedule are they telling you when to replace the injectors. Nowhere are they telling you in their service schedule that you need to plug in and do a diagnostic. So none of this can be used as an excuse to get out of it. Perhaps they should have provided better information on servicing, monitoring and injector replacement themselves, and put that into the service schedule so that people could make the right decision whether a diesel was for them or not. Now, these are very good engines. I love them. I think they're an awesome engine, and I think 99 point so many nines, I'm not going to bother saying it, you can avoid cracked pistons in these engines by following my advice. But my advice, I'm not the manufacturer, I'm not Toyota. They didn't give you my advice, so if you followed their advice and you ended up with a cracked piston, I think you're entitled to some sort of replacement with no out-of-pocket expenses to you, because when you invested in that trusted brand Toyota and that awesome engineering, you certainly didn't expect this to happen. Now, we've been doing this for a while, helping people get engines replaced one way or another at low costs or for free. You know, we've got the cracked piston fund. There's no guarantees of anyone getting paid. It's just people making a donation, lots of people putting small amounts, which adds up to a sum of money that we can buy an engine or contribute to the cost of engine replacement. But since the recent price rise on the engines, where they went up a couple of grand, we've kind of had enough of it. And it's really, the alarm bells have gone off, and we've woken up to the fact that, you know what, we already knew this, but we didn't really think about it, and we don't want to rub the wrong way and whatever, but it's all about fair and it's all about justice. And I have heard that Toyota have replaced engines at no cost, and I believe this is what needs to happen. Now, some people are going to say, you know, oh, but this and oh, but that. This video is not about oh, but this, oh, but that. It's about demonstrating and explaining to you what's normal failure and what's not. This is not a normal failure. If we've got an engine that's had regular service as per their schedule, It doesn't blow smoke. It's all happy days. You drive on, it's just beautiful, and you're doing within what the vehicle was designed for. You know, they designed a tow bar for it. They said you can tow 2.5 ton. So you're doing that, and you cracked the piston at 180,000 Ks because you hadn't changed your injectors, or 210, or 230, or 250, because that's commonly where it happens, because by about that time, the injectors are well and truly, I won't say flogged, because it depends what vintage injectors and vehicle we're talking about. Sometimes anything from really flogged to definitely not working right, and under those sorts of load conditions, things going on here aren't going to be right, and that's why you get the crack starting between the outlet. There's 8 little outlets on the nozzle, about 150 microns in size, and that's where those 8, you can see the marks on the piston, right? And that creates the heat, and that's where the cracks usually, that's where it all happens. We're not going into that too much. Abnormal failure, okay? I'm telling you, this is an abnormal, it's a fact that this is an abnormal failure. So this video perhaps can be used in evidence to your Toyota dealer or whatever. They know this already. We're not making an enemy of the Toyota dealers. Hopefully they're there to help. Talk to the right people, talk to the right dealer. Please put comments up letting us know how you went with your claim, and which dealers were helpful, perhaps, because sometimes it's who you deal with, okay? It's not, you know, it's sometimes a lot to do with the person, somebody that will go out of their way to help you get what you deserve. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope this has helped, just help you understand it's a massive difference, chalk and cheese, between a normal failure of an engine and a abnormal failure. A normal failure, wear and tear, that's the life expectancy of the vehicle. Fair enough, that's it. Sorry, you've got to buy a new engine. No assistance from us. We totally understand. Or it's had a lack of service. Look, you've only done your oil changes every 40,000. Guess what? We've got no sympathy for the people that didn't do the right service, but we've got all the sympathy in the world for the people that did the right service, or they went above and beyond, and that's why we're spending the time right now to help. And this should just be really common sense. Abnormal failure, okay? It doesn't matter how much service people have done. This is what's happening, and there's no information provided by the manufacturer on how to avoid it. It's just going to happen to some people because they didn't know, get those injectors out, and some people believe they've done all the right things and it's happened anyway. Well, I'll make suggestions that, in my opinion, that the injectors were in there too long. Maybe there was fuel contamination, maybe you were asking too much of your 4-cylinder, or a combination of those, and definitely a whole heap of them with chips and tunes and remaps. Bada bing, bada boom. That's a video, guys. Hopefully it's been a help. Catch ya.